Well, good morning. Man, I'm glad to see y'all here today. I'm glad that it turned off fall outside. I had to dig out a long sleeve shirt out of my closet because apparently weather didn't get the memo that it's been hot. So I'm glad that you're here today. Hey, we're going to kick off a new series called The Struggle is Real. And I want you to know this is all for me because I know that you don't ever have any problems. You never had a struggle in life, you've never had a trial, you've never walked through any difficult times. But this is totally for me because I need this. Today has just been one of those days. It's just, if it could go wrong, it will. Last night I was up here by myself and I was moving something and I missed a step. And I promise you I broke my toe. But I thought, okay, I'm not going to overreact because I don't want to be one of those people. Plus I was here by myself and nobody would have cared. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to, I'm going to tough it out. And so I walked back to my truck like this, and totally overreacting, and got home and I took my shoe off and there was blood all over my sock. And I thought, I wasn't overreacting, like I'm really injured. And so I showed Stacy this morning, I was like, look at my toe. She's like, which one? I said, clearly the one with blood. And so the struggle has been real in my life today. So we're going to talk about this topic of struggle, and no matter who you are, we've all had struggles in life. Some of us, we have a summer home over there in Crazy Town. Like we go visit Crazy every now and again. Some of us, we live in Crazy Town. All right, like our house is there. We get our mail in Crazy Town. We wake up and things are crazy. We go to bed and it's just like, okay, thank God I've got a little bit of hair left. I haven't pulled it all out yet. We understand what it is to have struggles, to have life be just crazy. Sometimes for us, the struggle or the pressure that we have in life, maybe it's relational. Maybe you go home and it's just like World War III. I mean, people are just saying stuff and just lobbing grenades and, throwing missiles and shooting at each other. And it's bad. And the struggle at home is real. Some of you, I've seen how you play Phase 10, and I'm amazed that your spouse lets you sleep next to them in the bed. I mean, there's a struggle in your life, definitely, is real. For some of us, the struggle is financial. I mean, we get to the end of the month and we're like, man, I have more month than I have money. Okay? Like there's more dates left on the calendar than there is spaces in my checkbook. And so the struggle, the stress, the strain is financial. For some of us, it's a child. Like we have a child that just struggles making those wise decisions. And so the tension, the stress, the strain in our life is a child. Maybe you graduated from college, or maybe you graduated and you're looking for a job and you haven't found one, or maybe you just had a job and you changed jobs and you got to that job and you decided you don't like it as much as you liked your old job. And so there's struggle and there's stress and there's tension and anxiety. Maybe you're here today like I was a while ago, a couple of years ago, and you've lost a job. The struggle is real. I mean, you wake up and you don't get to go to work tomorrow morning. I mean, most of us think, okay, I got to go to work tomorrow. But when you don't have to go to work tomorrow, the struggle gets real in a hurry. And so we've all been there. We all know people that have been there. But you know what the good news about struggles are? The good news about struggling is you don't have to struggle alone. And for so often, we walk through these trials in life and we go through these difficult passages and we think that we're the only person walking that difficult road. If you hear nothing else that we say today, hear this: you do not struggle alone. You don't go through life's trials and tribulations and the temptations and all of the hard, awful, hateful, terrible, ugly, nasty things that happen. You're just going to go sit out back and eat a worm. Those things don't happen to you and you be alone. Because the Bible promises that God is with us and He walks with us. And look around you. There are other people who have been in the middle of the struggle that you're in, and somehow they survived. Some of us have less hair because of it, but we have survived. Because I know the same thing that you know, and it's this: that God is faithful. God will not bring you in life to the point where you are and bring you through every trial and every struggle and every just nasty, horrible, hateful thing that's ever happened to you to get you to this point to let you sink here. All right? Maybe if there's one other thing that you need to hear today, it may need to be this: the storm or the struggle that you're having right now is not the struggle that's going to sink you unless you let it. I'm going to say that again. That's good. It's not on the screen. It's not in notes. Hey, we should write that down. But the struggle that you're in the middle of right now is not the struggle that's going to sink you unless you let it. When I was getting ready for this talk this week, I was reminded of a story of a guy who was a photographer, and there were some wildfires out in Southern California, and this magazine that the photographer worked for wanted some close-up shots of the wildfire. And so they called the photographer and they said, go out here to this airfield. There's going to be a Cessna sitting there on the runway. Just get in it, and the pilot will take you to the wildfires, and you can take your pictures. So the photographer says, okay. So he goes to the airfield. He gets in the airplane. He looks at the pilot and says, all right, let's go. And the pilot said, well, where are we going? He said, well, we're going to fly over those wildfires over there. I need you to get real low, real close to the treetops. And the pilot says, why are we doing that? You know, they've taken off and they're headed there towards the wildfires. And the pilot says, well, why are we going to fly so close to the fire? And the photographer says, well, I'm a photographer. I'm going to take pictures of the fire because they want them for the magazine. I'm a photographer. That's what I do. And the pilot turned around and looked at him and said, you mean you're not the flight instructor? We need one of those laugh now signs. We've all been in one of those situations where we get somewhere and it's not where we thought we would be. Or we wind up with a group of people that we did not think we were going to wind up with. And then in that moment, man, there's that tension. You want me to do what? God, I thought I heard you. I thought you told me to marry this person, and now I realize I married a couch potato, a potato. Oh, dad gum. I worked on that like for a week. You realize you married a couch that burps. There. I'm going to sit back down. You people aren't helping me none. But you feel like you heard God, and you get in the middle of a struggle, and you're just like, God, what's going on? Like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I bargained for. And so thankfully, God speaks truth, and He speaks wisdom in the middle of our trials and our temptations and our struggles. And for most of us, it's in those moments when life gets hard, A, that we realize who our friends are, and B, we discover that most of the time we have misplaced our trust. Because a lot of times we put our trust in the wrong thing. We'll put our trust in a job, or we'll put our trust in a certain income number, or we'll put our trust in living in a location or driving a certain car. We'll put our trust in a person instead of trusting in God. Isaiah was a smart dude. He wrote this in Isaiah 2:22, and I have this. I wish I could say I had it like on a plaque in my office, but it's just printed on a piece of paper. But it says this: Isaiah writes, "Stop trusting in mere humans," that would be you and me, "who have but breath in their nostrils," that's us. To whom is he accountable? So Isaiah writes, stop trusting in people, because people are even accountable to God. And if we put all of our eggs in the basket of trusting people, they're going to let us down every single time. I promise you, you look at me and my bald awesomeness wearing my Jack Bunyan shirt or Paul Bunyan shirt or whatever it is. I mean, you look at me and you think, man, that guy's awesome. He'll never let you down. I promise you I will. The greatest, the best person you know is going to let you down. They're going to fall short of your expectation, especially when you have a struggle in life. And Isaiah writes, don't put your trust in people. Put it in God. So today, the question that we need to ask is this: do we completely trust Jesus with everything? Do we trust Him with everything? Do we trust Him with our relationships? Do we trust Him with our finances and with our children and with our job? And do we trust Him with everything that we have? And here's the takeaway. You ready? It's this: fear fights trust. If you want to know the greatest hurdle to trust, it's fear. It's not lack of knowledge. It's not lack of willpower. It's not you need to get up in the morning and look at yourself in the mirror and you are a go-getter. You are a killer. And not one of those help promotional type of things. And hey, I'm all for that if you want to do that. But it's fear. Fear is the thing that fights our trust in God. Because we can all sit here and say, yeah, I need to trust Jesus more. Yeah, I've decided I'm going to follow Jesus. I trust you. Yeah, hallelujah, glory. And then we walk out of here and we get a text from somebody that they've got a disease. And the first thing we do We start griping and complaining and calling, hey, I got this doctor friend over here, and I know this nurse, and I know this person. And so immediately fear creeps in that God is not going to be able to handle the difficulty in our life. And so the enemy will do anything he can to put fear in your heart, because it's fear that drives a wedge between you and your trust in God. Are you following me? Say yes. All right, Mark chapter 4. If you brought your Bible, you can look there. If you don't have a Bible, you can look at it on your phone. If you didn't put it on your phone, we're going to put it on the screens for your viewing pleasure. So everybody just hold on tight. Mark chapter 4 and verse 35. Now this is a story of when Jesus and the disciples are getting in the boat. All right? And so we pick up the story in verse 35, and it said, that day when evening came, he said to his disciples, let us go over to the other side. And so Jesus, in Mark chapter 4, had just finished talking about the parable of the sower. And he had just finished talking to people. And what they would do back in the day is a lot of times, they would stand on the bow of a boat, and they would push the boat out into the water a little bit. And they would use the water as like a sounding board or an amplifier, an amphitheater, if you will, so that the voice of the speaker would carry farther. And so at this point, Jesus was in a boat, and they had pushed back from the shore, and Jesus was teaching the people. And so Jesus gets done talking about the parable of the sower, and he looks at the guys in the boat and says, hey, let's go over to the other side. He says, hey, let's go on a little journey. We're going to go here, and we're going to go to the other side. Now, can I tell you, when you follow Jesus, sometimes you're in a boat, and you don't know where you're going. You can think you know where you're going. But sometimes when you get in the boat with Jesus, you don't get to paddle. You don't get to row. The boat doesn't go at your speed. It doesn't go at my speed. We're just going with Jesus. All right? So these guys are in the boat. And Jesus says, hey, we're going to go to the other side. And so the disciples are in the boat. Jesus is in the boat. But they had no idea they were heading into the middle of a storm. Have you ever been in that situation in life? Have you ever been headed into a storm and you just didn't know it yet? You look back and you can look at it and say, yeah, I was headed into the storm. Can I tell you something the disciples knew? They knew who they were following, but they didn't know what was coming. And so herein lies the rub, or herein lies the problem for you and me. When we put our trust in people, we begin to follow people. And Jesus wants us to put our trust in Him so that we are following Him, because neither road we know what's coming. But I would rather be following Jesus than following somebody else. I would rather be following somebody who's got my best interest in mind all of the time. Because my friends, as good as they are and as awesome as they are to hang out with, they don't always have my best interest in mind. But Jesus does. And so no matter the overwhelming situation that you're in, His Word is true. And the Word is that we can trust Him. And no matter what storm you're in, or what storm you're headed in, or what storm you're coming out of, or what storm you're in the middle of, that storm's not the storm that's going to sink you if you let it. And so Mark chapter 4, verse 36, the next verse, he says, leaving the crowd, they took Him along just as He was in the boat. And there were also other boats with Him. Verse 37 says, a furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. So we have a boat, and we have Jesus in the boat. And He's got the disciples, and He's told them we're going to go over to the other side. Now let me ask you a question. In the middle of the storm, they knew the direction. They knew where they were going. Jesus told these people, the disciples, we're going to the other side, right? But the storm came up. Now, how many of you would think, looking back now, how many of you think what percentage of chance that the boat doesn't make it to the other side? 0% chance, right? I mean, Jesus said, we're going to the other side of the lake. It wasn't, hey, let's strike out in some direction. Jesus told them very clearly, go to the other side. For some of you, God has told you something very clearly. And in the middle of a storm, you're looking around thinking, okay, God, did I hear you? Like, was this wrong? Am I doing the wrong thing? And so here were the disciples with Jesus in the boat, and they're doing what Jesus told them to do, and they come across a storm, and they don't understand it, they don't expect it, but they've got Jesus in the boat, and let's find out where Jesus is. Verse 38. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping. How many of us feel like we have ever been in the middle of a storm and Jesus was asleep? Yeah, right? Been there, done that. Got the t-shirt, okay? And so Jesus was in the stern and he was sleeping on the cushion. Jesus says, get in the boat. We're going to go to the other side. And Jesus fell asleep. Do you know why Jesus was sleeping? This is going to be theological and it's going to blow your mind. You ready? You ready? He was tired. Jesus was sleeping because he was tired. And we think, Jesus like comes down from cables from the ceiling and he's glowing like lightning or something like that. And, Jesus was human like we are. And he was tired. He'd been speaking and preaching and tending to people's needs and all that kind of stuff. And so he was in the boat and he was tired. Verse 37, it says, a furious squall came up and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Here's what's important to know about these guys. They were fishermen. Like, they were professional fishermen. They had been in some storms before. But this one was different. Like, this one was so different that even they were scared. And maybe you've been through some storms before, and they've been rough, but maybe you're in the middle of one now that's unlike anything you've ever seen. I mean, maybe you've been in the midst of a downpour, and now you're standing in the middle of Hurricane Katrina with an umbrella, and you feel like you're just getting wasted. And so this storm was different. But can we also note that there is no storm that's too big that Jesus can't speak into it? There's no trouble in your life that's too big. There's no struggle in your heart that God can't deal with. There's no family problem, no financial problem, no geographical location problem that God cannot or will not handle. And so there is no storm that's too big. And so the disciples, they're wigging out. They're in this boat and it's nearly swamped. And so, they're up there bailing and they're rowing and they're doing battening the hatches or whatever you do in a boat in a storm like that. I don't know. But I've only been on the Sea of Ross Barnett in the middle of a storm. I've never been on like a real ocean in the middle of a storm. And so I don't know what you do. But whatever you do, they were doing it. And in the middle of fighting the storm and trying to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to save their life, and they're a barrel of water and they're rowing on the oars and doing all of that stuff, somebody realizes, hey, Jesus, he's in the boat. Now, I don't know who drew the short straw. Like, who volunteers to go wake up Jesus? He's taking a nap. Is he one of those angry waker-upper peoples? Like when I take a nap and I wake up too early, I'm angry. Like, where's my coffee? Stacy will say, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't care, where's my coffee? It's just, is he one of those angry wake-up? Who's going to go wake up Jesus? And so the disciples go and they wake up Jesus. There's a storm going outside, and they were doing everything they could, and finally somebody went and woke up Jesus. And look at what they said. They said, teacher, don't you care if we drown? Now pause. There's one thing to go wake up Jesus. It's not something totally different to go wake up Jesus with a bad attitude. Okay? Like, I'd be like, excuse me, Sir Jesus, hey, wake up. We're about to die. They're like, don't you care if we drown? Half of 36. I'm jumping all over the place. God love you. You're following me. Great. Mark, okay. There were also other boats with him. Okay. So do you remember the Vacation Bible School song? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you learned it, maybe you haven't. With Jesus in the boat, you can smile in the storm. Yeah, you've heard that? Okay. You've heard that. You're going to be washing dishes tomorrow, and that's going to fry your brain. It's going to come back, okay? So here's what you have. You have with Jesus in the boat, you can smile. So you have that boat, and you have also other boats. Can I tell you, if I'm in a boat in the middle of a storm, I would rather be in a boat with a sleeping Jesus in the middle of a storm than be in a boat with an awake anybody else. And so if Jesus is in your boat, if you have trusted him in your life, and he is the one giving you direction and purpose, and he is in your life, it doesn't matter what the other boats are doing. It doesn't matter how the storm is affecting the other boats, because Jesus is in the boat. And so they go and wake up Jesus. And they accuse him. Don't you care if we drown? I mean, they just quite haven't gotten it yet. A couple of years ago, we took our kids to Stacy's parents, and they have one of those above-ground pools that's waist deep or 4 foot or whatever. And none of our kids are tall enough to stand up in it, but we threw them over in there anyway, because as a good parent, that's you're obligated to do that. And so we were trying to teach them to float. And if you lay on your back, have you ever done this? Lay on your back real still. You can float in the water. So we were trying to teach our kids how to lay on their back and float. But they would realize they weren't touching the bottom, and they would panic. And then they would start to sink. And so in that moment, God said, that's how we are. God is trying to teach us something. He's trying to teach us how to handle the struggles and the storms that come in life, and we're freaking out so bad that we're sinking. And if we understood the heart that God had for us, we wouldn't spaz out. We would look around and say, okay, God, you're trying to teach me, like we were trying to teach our kids how to swim because it's something that we knew they would enjoy once they learned how to do it. And God may be putting you in the middle of a storm right now because there's a bigger storm coming. Like hold on to the pew. Oh, help me, Jesus. No, we don't want it to get any bigger than this. But he may be teaching you something. And when you're in the middle of a storm, and don't spaz out. Because if you trusted Jesus, he's in the boat. And remember, it's fear that fights trust. So 38, Jesus was in the stern and he was sleeping on a cushion. And they didn't know he was going to be Messiah turned super weatherman. Okay? They didn't know what he was going to do. They didn't know if he was going to come out, and change direction, or that they didn't know what he was going to do. And look at what Jesus does. He was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. He got up. Nope, go back. Forward or back. You ready? He got up, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Peace, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. He didn't get up and he didn't do anything crazy. He didn't run around the boat. He didn't, nothing. He spoke peace into a situation that was very chaotic. Can I tell you, there is no situation in your life that is too chaotic that God can't speak peace into. My prayer for you today is that you leave with peace. If we could give you anything, like if I could tangibly hand you something, it would be that. Because when you put your trust in God, rather than your trust in people, there is a peace that comes from that you cannot find any other way. You can't get it at Dollar General. You can't get it at the Dollar Tree. You can't go to Walmart and get it. It's not on the half-price rotten rack over at Kroger. God can give you peace that only comes from trusting him. And so he stands up in the middle of the storm and he says, "Peace, be still." So where does the fear factor part come in this? Do you know it's really hard to sink a boat? I mean, it really is. It's difficult. Now, the people on the Titanic maybe would tell you a different story, but by and large, it's hard to sink a boat. But how? Let's answer that. How do you sink a boat? It's simple, really. You allow what's on the outside of the boat to get on the inside of the boat. You allow the water that's outside, you allow the rain, the storm, the wind, you allow what's outside of the boat to get inside of the boat and start affecting what's on the inside of the boat, and you're going to sink every time. So what we need to take away from this is if we have Jesus in our boat, if He is in our life, it's not about the storm on the outside, it's about the storm that we allow on the inside. Because He can take care of the storms on the outside and the storms on the inside. But so many times we walk through these struggles over and over, and our life looks like a roller coaster because we're trusting Him, and then something happens and our trust takes a nosedive, and instead of continuing to trust Him, we panic. And we live out of fear. And then somebody, comes along and whops us upside the head and says, hey, God's brought you this far. He's not going to drop you. When Stacy and I moved here to start this church with you awesome people, we woke up every day almost and told ourselves, God has an unblemished track record of taking care of us. He's not going to spoil it now. God bats 1,000 every stinking time. God's not going to bring you this far and drop you. God's not going to let the storm that's out there that's raging, He's not going to let it sink you. But for you and I, we live with so much anxiety and so much fear, and we struggle with depression. And there's, hey, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, got it, done them all. Can I tell you, not one moment of anxiety gave me any amount of peace that God gives me. And so worrying and fretting and fussing and just living a life that's a disaster doesn't do us any good. Because He asks us where our peace is, where our trust is. Look at verse 40. And so He says to the disciples, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? One translation says, do you still not trust me? These were the disciples. They were Jesus' homeboys. They had been following Him. They knew Him. They knew what He was capable of. They had seen it with their own eyes. And they got in the storm and they panicked just like we do. And they go with Him with a bad attitude and say, don't you care if we drown? And so Jesus stands up and He speaks peace into that situation. And then He asks them this question. Do you still have no faith? Do you still not trust me? Can I tell you, you can read the Bible from cover to cover, from Genesis to Maps, and you could memorize every bit of it. You could know all the verses in the Bible. You could tell them to me frontwards and backwards, and you could do whatever you want to with the Bible. But if you don't settle the question, do you not trust me? Then we've missed the point of the whole thing. Because by not trusting God, we have allowed fear to step in and to take over and to run our life. And that's a dangerous place to be. It's a very dangerous place to be. Real quick, I'm going to close and we'll be finished. Imagine if you had a cup. If I had a bucket and set the bucket on the stool. I didn't want to bring water in their building here at First Baptist. They would probably frown on that. But if we had a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket, and I could fill the bucket all the way to the brim, we put 5 gallons of water. And then imagine if I came along with a gallon of Kool-Aid and I wanted to add it to the bucket. I couldn't really do that because the bucket is full. Can I tell you, that bucket is us. And if our life is full to the top with fear, and we're full to the top with anxiety, and our life is full of a lack of trust in God, we don't have anywhere to put our faith. Because fear fights faith, or fear fights trust. And so we have to empty that anxiety, that fear out to allow room in our heart to trust Him. Because if we fail to trust Him, then the storm that's on the outside is going to get on the inside and it's going to sink us. So can I tell you today, there is no struggle that you are struggling with that is too big that God can't speak peace to it. And I want to leave you with this. Don't leave without discovering that peace. Because there's peace that only Jesus can give you. And this isn't a salesmanship. I'm not going to promise you a big shiny new Buick when you go outside. And it's also not a zonk, right? I mean, we're not going to pull back the curtains and there be like a pen of goats back here. It's real. God's not going to shortchange you. And I can tell you from personal experience that He can give you peace that you can't find anywhere else. And it's amazing. It's amazing. We would love nothing more than to share that with you. I'm going to lead us in a prayer. We're going to close. Miss Faith's going to come up, and she's going to close us out. But look, on your card, there's some check marks on the bottom. I don't have one, but you can look. If everyone will fill that out and just leave it in the box on the way back, on the way out. But today, if you're here and you're like, you know what, I'm struggling with something, if you would just pray for me, write that on the back. We pray for those every week. And we send people email and text messages and follow up with you because that's what we're here for. That's what we do. And if you're here today and you're in the middle of a storm and today you realize that your trust is in the wrong person, it's in the wrong place, and you have yet to trust Jesus, you haven't done that yet, but you want to today, you can mark that box and we'll follow up with you. Like we said last week, we believe that our eternity is worth a conversation. If you want to take the next step in following Jesus, your next step in your faith journey, and you want to know more about baptism, we're going to do that on May the 21st. You can check that box, and we'd love to go have a Coke or a cup of coffee and talk with you about that. And there's lots of different ways that you can respond on there, and that's your way to communicate with us and our way to follow back up with you. So if you would do that and turn those in on your way out, I would appreciate it. All right, can I pray for you? And then we'll go. Father, thank you that you can speak peace in the midst of our storm. God, and thank you that there's no storm that's too big and that the danger that we should be most aware of is allowing what's on the outside to get on the inside. God, allowing the negativity of the people around us to get on the inside of our boat, or allowing the stress and the struggle that our life is going through to get on the inside of us and rob us of our joy and our peace and our trust and our faith in you. So, Father, for those of us that are struggling with whatever it is today, God, we lay that struggle at your feet. Father, I don't want to walk out of here carrying the struggle that I walked in here with. So today, God, I pray that you would make that real in our life. Lord, if there's anybody here that has not followed you and has not trusted you, God, and they're bailing water and they're trying to get the boat back right and they're trying to get the stuff out, but they're doing it under their own power and their own strength. And God, they're sitting here today just wishing that someone would speak peace to them. God, I pray that today would be the day that they would trust you with their heart and their life. And if that's you where you sit, we're not going to do anything strange. I'm going to lead you in a prayer, and you can pray it right there where you sit, and you can invite Jesus into your heart. Say, Dear Jesus, I'm messed up just like everybody else. And I've allowed the junk on the outside to get inside my boat, and I'm sinking. God, today I recognize that I'm a sinner and I've done it to myself. But today I want to trust you and ask that you would speak peace into my heart. God, and today help me trust you every step of my journey. So today, God, I give my life to you and ask you to come in my heart and save me. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Look, if you prayed that prayer and you meant it and you want somebody to follow it with you, that would be the greatest joy of our week. You can mark that on that box and turn it on the way out. Miss Faith. For those of you, we were actually going to put Faith and Kelly up here together so you could see who they were, but somehow we still managed